The moment he stood on that stage, smiling like he had built everything from scratch, I almost applauded. Almost. Because the entire time he was thanking the people who believed in him from day one, he didn't know I was in the audience. And he definitely didn't know I already had everything he stole from me saved in a folder labeled, just in case. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you would have taken a bullet for, stay with me. Because this one ends the way it should. Ryan and I met freshman year of college. Same dorm. Same broke bank accounts. Same dreams. We weren't just friends. We were brothers. The kind of friends who stay up until 3 a.m. talking about one day. The kind who split their last $20 for pizza. The kind who swear that when success comes, it comes for both of us. And for a long time, I believed that. We built our first app together in my parents' garage. 2 laptops. 1 whiteboard. No clue what we were doing. But it worked. Not perfectly. Not smoothly. But enough. Enough to attract attention. That's when things changed. At first, it was subtle. Ryan started taking more calls without me. Just investor stuff, he'd say casually, turning away while speaking. He'd close his laptop when I walked by. He started saying my idea instead of our idea. I told myself I was overthinking. Because that's what loyal people do. We doubt ourselves before we doubt the ones we love. Then came the pitch competition. Winner gets $100,000 in seed funding. We practiced for weeks. But the night before the final presentation, Ryan said something that felt off. Maybe I should do the main speaking tomorrow. You're great at building. I'm better at selling. It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Calm. Confident. Final. I swallowed my pride. Yeah. Sure. The next day, he crushed it. Standing ovation. Judges loved him. And when they announced the winner, we won. Or so I thought. Because 2 weeks later, I got an email. Not from Ryan. From the competition committee. Congratulations to Ryan Mitchell on securing funding. Ryan Mitchell. No Daniel Carter. No co-founder. Nothing. My stomach dropped. I called him immediately. He didn't pick up. I texted. No reply. And then I checked the company registration. He had filed paperwork. Sole founder. His name only. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was silent. Calculated. Legal. I felt it physically. Chest tight. Hands shaking. That hollow feeling behind your ribs when your reality cracks. I drove to his apartment. He opened the door like nothing was wrong. Oh, hey. Hey? You forgot to mention you erased me. He sighed. Not angry. Not guilty. Annoyed. Daniel, it just made more sense this way. Investors prefer one clear leader. You're not, the face. The face. I had coded 80% of the platform. I had skipped family dinners. I had taken freelance jobs to pay server costs. But I wasn't the face. He leaned against the doorframe. You'll land on your feet. You're smart. That's when I understood something. He didn't think I'd fight back. He thought I'd accept it. Because I always had. But here's what he didn't know. I had screenshots. Emails. Voice memos. Shared documents with timestamps. Every version of our prototype stored in my private cloud. I wasn't suspicious. I was organized. And suddenly, that organization became power. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I smiled. Good luck, man. And I walked away. For the next 3 months, I disappeared. No angry posts. No drama. No legal threats. Just silence. Meanwhile, Ryan's startup exploded. Press interviews. Podcast features. Local news coverage. Every time he said, I built this from nothing, I felt something sharp in my chest. But I waited. Because revenge isn't about reaction. It's about timing. During those 3 months, I did 2 things. First, I contacted a lawyer. Second, I built version 2. Alone. Better. Cleaner. Stronger. And here's the twist Ryan never saw coming. Buried in our original codebase was my signature framework. Not obvious. But identifiable. Like a fingerprint. And legally? Intellectual property theft is not something investors like hearing about. Especially not during series of funding. The day Ryan announced his major funding round, I sent 1 email. To his lead investor. Subject line, co-founder documentation and IP clarification. Attached, everything. Original GIT logs. Early draft agreements. Voice recording of Ryan saying, we're 50/50ths on this, always. Within 48 hours, his funding announcement disappeared from LinkedIn. Within a week, investors demanded an internal audit. Within 2 weeks, I got a call. Not from Ryan. From his legal team. Suddenly, they wanted to discuss misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. The same way erasing someone from their own company is a misunderstanding. We settled. Quietly. Legally. He transferred 50% equity back. Public correction issued. Press statement updated to include co-founder Daniel Carter. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the launch event. 3 months later. Joint founders on stage. Lights bright. Crowd watching. Ryan stiff. Sweating. And me? Calm. Because this time, when reporters asked how the company started, I answered. We built it together in my parents' garage. Long nights. Shared sacrifices. It was always a partnership. I looked at him. He couldn't meet my eyes. Not anger. Not yelling. Just truth. Exposed. That's the thing about betrayal. It only works if the other person stays silent. And I refuse to stay silent. Today? The company thrives. But our friendship? Dead. And honestly? That hurts more than anything. Because revenge doesn't restore what was lost. It just restores balance. Ryan thought I was naive. He thought loyalty meant weakness. But loyalty with documentation? That's power. If you've ever been underestimated, remember this. Stay quiet. Stay prepared. And when the moment comes, let the truth do the damage. So tell me, if your best friend betrayed you like that, would you walk away, or would you make sure the world knew the truth? The first time Ryan tried to act normal after the settlement, that's when I realized something. He wasn't scared of losing money. He was scared of losing control. Because once the public correction went out, everything shifted. Investors started CCing me in emails. Developers started asking me technical questions directly. Reporters wanted joint interviews. And for the first time since the betrayal, I wasn't standing behind him. I was standing next to him. And he hated that. You could see it in the small things. The way his jaw tightened when someone said, Daniel built the back end, right? The way he'd quickly jump in to answer questions directed at me. The way he'd subtly try to dominate meetings. But here's what he still didn't know. Getting my equity back wasn't the real revenge. It was just step one. Because during those 3 silent months when he thought I disappeared, I wasn't just building version 2. I was studying him. Patterns. Habits. Weaknesses. Ryan had one fatal flaw. Ego. He didn't just want success. He wanted admiration. Validation. To be seen as the genius. And ego makes people sloppy. One night after a late investor dinner, he got careless. Too confident. Too comfortable. He pitched an expansion idea publicly at a networking event, a feature that sounded revolutionary. Everyone applauded. There was only one problem. It was my private prototype. A feature I had built quietly after the settlement. Something I hadn't pushed to production yet. Something that only existed on my personal development branch. Which meant one thing. He still had unauthorized access to my archived drive. He was digging. Stealing again. But this time? I didn't confront him. I let him present it. I let him promise launch dates. I let him attach his reputation to it. Then I did something small. Something quiet. I updated the encryption keys tied to that framework. And I scheduled a silent patch to activate 2 weeks later. The day of his big demo. I remember sitting in the audience. Again. Lights low. Screen glowing. Ryan pacing confidently on stage. This, he said proudly, is the future of our platform. He clicked to run the live feature. For 2 seconds, it loaded. Then the screen froze. Error message. Access revoked. System authorization failure. The room went silent. He laughed nervously. Looks like a minor bug. He tried again. Same result. Sweat forming at his temple. Investors whispering. Developers confused. Because they knew the production servers were stable. Ryan glanced backstage. No one could fix it. Because only one person could. Me. I didn't move at first. I let the silence stretch. Let the discomfort breathe. Then I slowly stood up. Walked toward the stage. Every step deliberate. He saw me. And for the first time since college, I saw fear in his eyes. Not annoyance. Not arrogance. Fear. I leaned in and spoke quietly enough that only he could hear. You should have asked before using my work. His smile twitched. You did this? I looked at the frozen screen. No. You did. Then I turned to the audience. Calm. Measured. The feature Ryan just demonstrated is currently in private development. It hasn't been cleared for public release yet. We'll provide a timeline once internal authorization protocols are aligned. Professional. Controlled. No accusations. Just truth wrapped in composure. Investors nodded. Ryan stepped back. Small. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the smartest man in the room. After the event, he cornered me backstage. What the hell was that? What was what? You sabotaged me. I tilted my head slightly. You presented an authorized code. I protected company assets. He clenched his fists. You're trying to embarrass me. I held his gaze. You embarrassed yourself. Silence. Heavy. The power dynamic had shifted. But here's the part no one sees in revenge stories. It's not just about destroying someone. It's about watching them slowly realize they underestimated you. And that realization? It's louder than any shout. From that day forward, Ryan became cautious. Paranoid. He double-checked permissions. He avoided improvising in meetings. He stopped taking credit too boldly. And that's when I understood something deeper. The betrayal didn't break me. It refined me. Because while he was focused on image, I was focused on structure. And structure always outlasts ego. But Ryan wasn't done. Men like him don't accept loss quietly. They look for another angle. And he found one. A week later, I received an email from HR. Formal complaint. Allegation of hostile collaboration behavior. Submitted anonymously. Except it wasn't anonymous. I recognized the phrasing. The corporate tone Ryan used when he tried to sound strategic. He was building a narrative. Trying to frame me as unstable. Difficult. Uncooperative. Slowly positioning himself as the reasonable leader. It was subtle. Calculated. And dangerous. Because reputations don't collapse overnight. They erode. Quietly. Just like friendships. And that's when I realized. This wasn't over. Not even close. The HR email wasn't aggressive. It was polite. Which somehow made it worse. Daniel, we've received concerns regarding collaboration difficulties and internal tension. We'd like to schedule a discussion. Concerns. Tension. Carefully chosen words. No direct accusations. Just seeds. And I knew exactly who planted them. Ryan wasn't trying to beat me head-on anymore. He was trying to weaken my credibility. Because in business, perception is leverage. And if he couldn't erase me legally, he'd isolate me socially. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I opened a new document. Title, Pattern. Because this wasn't one event. It was a sequence. Unauthorized code access. Public embarrassment. HR complaint. He was escalating. But here's what Ryan still failed to understand. I had learned from him. And I had evolved. The HR meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m. I arrived early. Calm. Carrying nothing but my laptop. Ryan walked in 5 minutes later. Slight smirk. Like he'd already won. The HR director, Melissa, folded her hands gently. Daniel, we just want to ensure team harmony. There have been concerns about aggressive tone in meetings. Aggressive. Interesting. I nodded slowly. I'm glad we're discussing communication. Transparency matters. Ryan shifted slightly in his chair. I opened my laptop. Before we continue, I'd like to play something. I clicked. Meeting recording. 3 weeks earlier. Ryan's voice filled the room. Sharp. Dismissive. That's not how leadership works, Daniel. Stay in your lane. Melissa's eyebrows lifted. I clicked another file. Slack exports. Timestamped. Ryan privately messaging developers to bypass my approvals. Then another. Him instructing marketing to phrase press releases minimizing my role. I wasn't raising my voice. I wasn't accusing. I was documenting. Silence grew thick. Ryan leaned forward. You recorded meetings. I looked at him evenly. For documentation. Transparency matters, right? Melissa cleared her throat. This changes the context. Of course it did. Because Ryan assumed I would defend emotionally. Instead, I responded structurally. The meeting ended differently than he expected. No formal warning. No disciplinary note. Instead, HR recommended clearer role boundaries. Which translated to equal authority. Written confirmation. From that day on, every executive decision required dual sign-off. Ryan had tried to corner me. Instead, he tied himself to me contractual. But revenge isn't just about reacting to attacks. It's about anticipating the next one. And I knew Ryan's next move wouldn't be internal. It would be external. Public image. He needed narrative control back. So he scheduled a podcast interview. Major startup channel. Hundreds of thousands of listeners. The topic? Founders and conflict, navigating difficult partnerships. The irony almost made me laugh. The interview went live on a Monday morning. I listened alone in my office. Ryan's voice was smooth. Controlled. He never mentioned my name directly. But he painted a picture. One of the hardest lessons I learned was outgrowing people who can't handle scaling. Not everyone is built for leadership pressure. Subtle. Calculated. To outsiders, it sounded generic. To insiders, it was obvious. He was framing me as the weak link. And here's the thing about public perception. Silence equals agreement. So this time, I didn't stay silent. But I didn't attack either. I booked the same podcast. 2 weeks later. Different episode. Different angle. Building with integrity, protecting your vision and partnerships. When the host asked about co-founder disputes, I didn't insult Ryan. I didn't expose him. I told a story. About 2 college kids in a garage. About loyalty. About legal ownership. About the importance of written agreements. And then I said one sentence. Calm. Measured. Trust is powerful. But documentation protects both sides. That clip spread. Because it wasn't messy. It was wise. Investors began reaching out to me directly for advisory calls. Founders asked for guidance on equity structure. Suddenly, I wasn't just the technical guy. I was the steady one. The responsible one. And that threatened him more than any public argument ever could. The tension between us became invisible but constant. Board meetings felt colder. Shorter. More transactional. Then one evening, after everyone had left, Ryan walked into my office. No smile. No performance. Just him. You're trying to replace me. I leaned back in my chair. If I wanted that, I'd already have done it. His jaw tightened. You're poisoning the board against me. I stared at him. You did that yourself when you tried to erase me. The truth hit harder than yelling ever could. He stepped closer. You think you've won? I didn't answer immediately. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about balance. I think, I said slowly, you underestimated me. And that silence that followed? That was heavier than any argument. Because he finally understood. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was positioning. And Ryan had just realized. The real battle hadn't even started yet. The board meeting was scheduled for Friday. Emergency session. No detailed agenda. Just one line. Leadership structure review. Ryan thought he was making a move. But he wasn't the only one preparing. 3 days before that meeting, one of our senior developers, Mark, knocked on my office door. He looked nervous. Like someone carrying something heavy. Daniel. I need to show you something. He handed me printed emails. Private thread. Ryan offering him a future executive title if he sided with him during the board vote. In exchange? Supporting a motion to restructure technical leadership. Translation. Remove me. Legally. Cleanly. Strategically. I didn't react outwardly. Inside, though, something settled. Cold. Clear. This wasn't ego anymore. This was war. But wars aren't won with explosions. They are won with positioning. I thanked Mark. Told him he did the right thing. Then I asked him one question. Did anyone else get an offer like this? He hesitated. 2 others. Good. Because 1 witness is a story. 3 witnesses is a pattern. Friday arrived. Boardroom glass walls. City skyline behind us. 5 board members. Ryan on one side. Me on the other. He looked confident. Too confident. Which meant he believed his groundwork was solid. The chairman began. There have been concerns about internal leadership friction. Ryan, you requested this review. You may begin. Ryan stood. Smooth. Measured. He talked about scalability. Vision alignment. Operational efficiency. He used phrases like streamlining command and clarifying executive hierarchy. Then he said it. I propose we appoint a single CEO to prevent internal power conflict. Single CEO. Him. Of course. He framed it like maturity. Like growth. Like evolution. He didn't attack me directly. He implied. The company needs unified direction. Translation. Daniel needs to go. When he finished, the room was quiet. Then the chairman turned to me. Daniel. I didn't stand immediately. I looked at Ryan first. He avoided my eyes. Interesting. Then I slowly rose. I agree with Ryan on one thing, I began calmly. The company needs clarity. That caught him off guard. He blinked. I continued. Clarity about leadership. Clarity about ethics. Clarity about integrity. I slid 3 envelopes across the table. Addressed to the board. The chairman opened the first. Printed emails. Job title promises. Conditional loyalty offers. His expression shifted. Second envelope. Slack messages instructing developers to conceal conversations. Third envelope. Recorded audio. Ryan's voice. Clear. If Daniel becomes a liability, we remove him quietly. The room went still. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Still. The kind of silence that changes power permanently. Ryan's face drained of color. You recorded me, he snapped. I didn't raise my voice. You tried to remove me quietly. One board member leaned forward. Ryan, is this authentic? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. No strong denial. Because he knew. The timestamps were real. The emails were real. The voices were real. This wasn't revenge driven by anger. It was exposure driven by patience. The chairman removed his glasses slowly. This meeting has shifted. Yes, it had. Within 20 minutes, the proposal changed. Instead of appointing a single CEO, they proposed something else. An independent governance audit. And temporary oversight. Meaning neither of us had full unchecked power. But here's the part Ryan didn't anticipate. Oversight examines patterns. And his pattern was messy. Mine wasn't. After the meeting, he followed me into the hallway. For the first time, there was no arrogance left. Just desperation. You're destroying everything. I turned to him. No. I'm protecting it. He ran a hand through his hair. This company was my dream. I looked at him steadily. It was ours. That word hurt him. Because it reminded him of where this started. 2 broke kids. 1 garage. 1 promise. And he broke it first. He lowered his voice. What do you want? Finally. The right question. Not accusation. Not threat. Negotiation. I held his gaze. I want transparency. Equal authority. And no more side deals. He swallowed. And if I say no? I didn't smile. I didn't threaten. I just said the truth. Then the audit goes deeper. He understood. Because ego survives humiliation. But it doesn't survive documentation. Over the next month, the audit unfolded. Financial reviews. Access logs. Internal communications. Every shortcut he took came to light. Nothing criminal. But enough manipulation to erode confidence. The board didn't fire him. That would have been too dramatic. Instead, they did something worse. They reduced his authority. Major decisions required consensus. Investor communication had to be co-approved. Public appearances scheduled jointly. The spotlight he loved? Shared permanently. And that's when I saw it. Not anger. Not hatred. But something heavier. Regret. Because he finally understood something too late. If he had just kept his word, none of this would have happened. But betrayal changes the rules. And once trust fractures, everything becomes strategic. One evening, weeks later, I found him alone in the conference room. Lights off. City glowing outside. He didn't look at me. Was it worth it? He asked quietly. I thought about that. About sleepless nights. Lawyers. Recordings. Positioning. Losing a friend. Yes, I said finally. Because I learned who you really were. He nodded slightly. And for the first time, he didn't argue. But deep down, I knew something else. Ryan wasn't finished. People like him don't stop when they lose control. They look for one final move. And I had a feeling he was already planning it. You can always tell when someone is planning something. They get quieter. Not peaceful. Calculating. Ryan stopped arguing. Stopped pushing in meetings. Stopped trying to publicly undermine me. On the surface, it looked like maturity. Growth. Maybe even guilt. But I'd known him too long. Ryan never surrendered. He repositioned. 2 weeks after the audit wrapped up, I received a call from one of our early investors. David. He sounded cautious. Daniel, I need to ask you something directly. Go ahead. Is there internal instability we should be concerned about? That word again. Instability. It wasn't random. Someone was planting doubt externally. Carefully. Subtly. I kept my tone steady. We just completed a governance audit. Everything is structured. Pause. Then he added, Ryan mentioned you've been distracted lately. Personal issues affecting leadership. Personal issues? Interesting. Because I didn't have any. Which meant he was creating a narrative. Again. But this time, smarter. Not attacking my credibility. Attacking my stability. And perception of instability spreads fast in startup ecosystems. I thanked David. Hung up. And leaned back in my chair. Ryan wasn't trying to remove me anymore. He was trying to isolate me from investor confidence. If investors doubted me, board influence shifted. If board influence shifted, authority shifted. It was a long game. But here's what he underestimated. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was building alliances. Over the past months, while he obsessed over control, I had been doing something quieter. Mentoring junior founders. Advising technical accelerators. Participating in investor roundtables. Not loudly. Not publicly flashy. Just consistently. Building trust. Reputation. Credibility. So when Ryan began quietly questioning my stability, it didn't land the way he expected. Because credibility compounds. And mine had been compounding. Still, I needed proof. Not suspicion. Proof. 3 days later, it came. By accident. Or maybe fate. Our operations manager, Elena, forwarded me a misdirected email. It was from Ryan. To a private investor group. Subject line, confidential, leadership continuity planning. I read it slowly. He was outlining a contingency plan. Framing me as a potential, technical founder who may struggle with scaling pressure. Suggesting that in the event of voluntary transition, he would assume sole executive leadership for stability. Voluntary transition. He was building a soft exit narrative. Positioning himself as the stable anchor. Positioning me as the fragile variable. It was subtle. No direct lies. Just implication. Strategic wording. The kind that plants doubt without fingerprints. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. Not angry. Not shocked. Just tired. Because at some point, revenge stops feeling powerful. And starts feeling heavy. But then something clicked. Ryan thought this was chess. But he forgot something. Chess has rules. And he had broken enough of them already. Instead of confronting him privately, I requested a full investor sync meeting. All major stakeholders. Virtual. Transparent. He didn't know why. He assumed routine update. When the meeting began, Ryan spoke first. Confident. Smooth. Performance mode activated. Then I took over. I want to address something directly, I said calmly. I've recently become aware of discussions about leadership continuity. Ryan's posture stiffened slightly. Subtle. But visible. I believe transparency prevents instability, I continued. So I've shared the full audit report, governance structure, and operational metrics with all of you. I watched the participants' faces on screen. Focused. Engaged. Then I added the final piece. And I've attached recent communications that reference potential leadership restructuring. Ryan's camera froze for half a second. Not technically. Emotionally. Because he understood. I wasn't accusing. I was exposing context. One investor unmuted. Ryan, can you clarify this contingency planning? He tried to recover. It's just responsible preparation. Another investor interrupted. Without board approval. Silence. Heavy. Controlled. I didn't interrupt him. I didn't attack. I let the silence do its work. That's something I learned over this entire war. Silence forces truth to breathe. The meeting ended differently than he expected. No one accused him directly. But something shifted again. Trust. Not broken. But cracked. After the call, he stormed into my office. Door shut hard. You're trying to ruin me. I stood slowly. No, Ryan. I'm refusing to let you ruin me. His voice rose. You think investors will trust you after this drama? I stepped closer. They trust structure. And you keep creating instability. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Because the Daniel he betrayed months ago? That version would have begged. Argued emotionally. Defended himself desperately. This Daniel? Calculated. Composed. Prepared. He shook his head. You could have just walked away. That line hit differently. Walk away. After everything. After the garage. After the promises. After the betrayal. No, I said quietly. You don't get to erase me twice. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Fear. Because he realized something critical. The more he pushed, the more evidence surfaced. The more he maneuvered, the more visible his patterns became. And patterns, once seen, can't be unseen. But here's the part he didn't realize yet. I wasn't just defending anymore. I was preparing something bigger. Something final. Because revenge isn't complete when someone stumbles. It's complete when they understand the cost of betrayal. And I had just discovered something during that investor sync. Something buried in financial projections. Something Ryan had adjusted quietly. Numbers that didn't align. Revenue forecasts inflated. User growth slightly exaggerated. Not fraudulent. Not illegal. But aggressive enough to concern serious investors. And aggressive projections, if proven unrealistic, destroy credibility permanently. I closed my laptop that night with one clear thought. Ryan had just made his biggest mistake. Not betraying me. Not plotting behind my back. But underestimating how closely I was watching now. And I wasn't watching as a friend anymore. I was watching as someone who had nothing left to lose. And everything left to expose. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. But because I was thinking. Revenue projections. User growth curves. Marketing spend ratios. Ryan had adjusted them slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough to impress. Enough to create excitement. But here's what he forgot. I built the back-end analytics. I knew our real numbers. And projections that grow faster than infrastructure? They collapse publicly. The next morning, I scheduled a private review with our CFO. No drama. No accusations. Just numbers. We sat in the small conference room with the glass walls. Spreadsheets open. Silent tension. I want to compare internal growth metrics to investor deck projections, I said calmly. He hesitated, then nodded. We ran them side by side. The room got quiet fast. Because the gap was clear. Not massive, but deliberate. Inflated retention percentages. Optimistic churn reductions. Projected enterprise contracts that weren't signed yet. The CFO leaned back slowly. These adjustments were approved by Ryan. Of course they were. I nodded. No problem. Let's document everything. That word again. Document. It had become my weapon of choice. I didn't storm into Ryan's office. I didn't threaten exposure. Instead, I requested a board finance review. Formal. Scheduled. Transparent. When Ryan received the calendar invite, he walked into my office within minutes. You're escalating again. I kept my eyes on my screen. I'm verifying projections. They're projections, he snapped. They're supposed to be optimistic. Optimistic, I replied calmly, is different from misleading. His jaw tightened. You're sabotaging fundraising. I looked up slowly. No. I'm protecting the company from overpromising. That's when he lost composure. For the first time in weeks, his voice cracked slightly. You want me gone? Interesting. Because that hadn't been my goal. My goal was balance. But he kept pushing himself toward the edge. I want integrity, I said. The finance review happened 3 days later. Board members. CFO. Investor observer. Ryan came prepared with polished slides. Confident tone. Controlled narrative. But numbers don't care about tone. When discrepancies were presented side by side, the energy shifted instantly. One board member leaned forward. These enterprise deals, are they signed? Ryan hesitated. They're in advanced discussion. Meaning not signed. Silence. Another board member spoke. Retention adjustments, what data supports this improvement? Ryan tried to explain strategy. Future initiatives. Planned features. Vision. But projections without existing data? Risky. The chairman folded his hands. Ryan, aggressive forecasting is understandable. But without disclosure, it creates exposure. Exposure. That word hit hard. Because in startup ecosystems, exposure equals loss of trust. The review ended with one clear outcome. All future investor materials required CFO and dual founder verification. No solo adjustments. No independent revisions. Ryan walked out of that room different. Not furious. Not loud. Just shaken. Because this wasn't about humiliation anymore. It was erosion. Control slipping piece by piece. And he knew something I hadn't said out loud yet. If investors lost confidence in his projections, they would start seeing me as the stable alternative. That night, I stayed late. Office nearly empty. City lights flickering outside. Ryan walked in quietly. No performance. No arrogance. Just exhaustion. You don't trust me at all anymore, do you? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth wasn't simple. Trust doesn't disappear in one moment. It decays. Layer by layer. You stopped trusting me first, I said quietly. He looked down. For a brief second, I saw the old Ryan. The college kid in the garage. Laughing over cheap pizza. Dreaming big. Then it vanished. You could have just built your own company, he muttered. I did, I replied calmly. It's this one. That sentence landed harder than anything else. Because he finally understood. I wasn't trying to take his dream. I was defending mine. But here's what he didn't know yet. During the financial review prep, I found something else. A small clause in his employment contract. One he had insisted on months earlier. Performance-based CEO retention trigger. If the company failed to meet verified revenue growth targets for 2 consecutive quarters, board leadership restructuring could be initiated. At the time, he added it confidently, assuming he would always control projections. But now? All projections were verified. All numbers transparent. Meaning if real growth didn't match his inflated expectations, the clause activated. And this time, it wouldn't be me exposing him. It would be math. I closed my laptop slowly. Not smiling. Not celebrating. Just aware. Ryan had built his own trap. And for the first time, I wasn't chasing revenge. I was simply letting consequences line up naturally. He underestimated my patience. He underestimated documentation. But worst of all, he underestimated how far someone will go once they've been erased once already. And I had a feeling. The next quarter report was going to change everything. Quarter end came faster than either of us expected. Numbers don't lie. But they do reveal. And this quarter? They revealed everything. Revenue growth came in lower than Ryan's projected targets. Not catastrophic. Not failure. Just real. Honest. But honesty wasn't aligned with the narrative he had sold months ago. The board scheduled the performance review automatically. No emotion. Just policy. Clause activation. When Ryan saw the agenda, he didn't look surprised. He looked tired. Like someone who knew the storm was finally here. The conference room felt colder that morning. Maybe it was just me. Or maybe tension has temperature. The CFO presented first. Clean charts. Verified numbers. Growth, 14%. Projected growth in investor deck, 27%. The gap wasn't devastating. But it was undeniable. The chairman adjusted his glasses. Ryan, these projections were publicly emphasized in fundraising materials. Help us understand the variance. Ryan leaned forward. He tried to sound steady. Market conditions shifted. Enterprise deals slowed. One board member responded calmly. Market conditions affect everyone. The concern is projection confidence. Projection confidence. That phrase landed heavier than criticism. Because confidence, once cracked, spreads quietly. The chairman turned to the clause document. Based on performance metrics and governance agreements, we must discuss leadership alignment. That was the moment. The exact one Ryan never thought would arrive. Not because he believed he was perfect, but because he believed he could always control the story. Now the story was controlled by numbers. And numbers don't negotiate. I didn't speak immediately. This wasn't about attacking. It was about positioning. One board member finally asked me directly, "Daniel, do you believe leadership restructuring is necessary?" The room shifted slightly. All eyes on me. This was power. Raw. But power mishandled looks like revenge. Power handled correctly looks like responsibility. I took a breath. I believe stability is critical right now, I said calmly. If restructuring increases investor confidence, we should consider it carefully. Carefully. Not aggressively. Not emotionally. Ryan looked at me. Searching. Maybe hoping I'd defend him. Maybe fearing I wouldn't. The chairman leaned back. We propose appointing an interim executive structure. Daniel will oversee product and financial governance directly. Ryan will transition to strategic advisory during review. Strategic advisory. It sounded polite, but it meant one thing. Operational control shifting. Ryan's shoulders dropped slightly. Not dramatic. Just subtle surrender. He didn't argue. Didn't explode. Didn't accuse. He just nodded slowly. And that was worse than any fight. Because it meant he understood. This wasn't personal anymore. It was structural. After the meeting, he didn't follow me. He didn't confront me. He walked out alone. For the first time since college, we weren't equals. And I didn't feel victorious. I felt heavy. Because revenge fantasies always skip this part. The part where winning doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like loss. 2 days later, he requested a private meeting. No board. No HR. Just us. Same conference room where we signed our first funding agreement. He sat across from me. Hands folded. Quiet. You planned this, he said softly. I shook my head. No. I prepared for it. There's a difference. Planning someone's downfall is aggression. Preparing for consequences is defense. He stared at the table. You waited. Yes. Why? Because he erased me. Because he lied. Because he tried again. Because he never stopped trying to minimize me. But I didn't say all that. Instead, I said something simpler. Because you would have done it to me again. Silence. Long? Then he asked the question I didn't expect. Was I ever your friend after that first email? That one hit. Because the truth? I don't know. The betrayal created a crack that never fully sealed. I wanted you to be, I said honestly. He nodded slowly. I thought if I controlled everything, nothing could hurt me. There it was. Not ego. Fear. Ryan wasn't driven by greed. He was driven by insecurity. Fear of losing relevance. Fear of being overshadowed. Fear that without control, he'd disappear. And ironically, that fear created the exact outcome he was trying to avoid. You didn't have to erase me, I said quietly. He gave a faint, almost broken laugh. I know. But knowing too late doesn't undo damage. The transition began officially the following week. Internal announcement. Neutral language. Leadership realignment to strengthen governance. Employees read between the lines. They always do. I didn't celebrate. Didn't post anything. Didn't take victory laps. Instead, I focused on the company. Product stability. Investor reassurance. Team morale. Because if I acted like this was revenge, then I'd become the villain in someone else's story. But here's what Ryan didn't know yet. The advisory role was temporary. Review period, 90 days. And during that review, board members evaluate long-term CEO placement. Permanent. Meaning this wasn't just a shift. It was a countdown. And whether he fully understood it or not, The final decision hadn't been made yet. And this time, it wouldn't be about projections. It would be about trust. And trust, once broken twice, is almost impossible to rebuild. The 90-day review period started quietly. No announcement countdown. No public drama. Just a shift in atmosphere. People talk differently when leadership changes. More cautious. More observant. Every email felt heavier. Every meeting felt like evaluation. Ryan stopped coming into the office daily. Strategic advisory role meant flexibility, which really meant distance. But distance doesn't erase presence. His name was still on the website. Still on contracts. Still in investor decks. And that made everything complicated. Meanwhile, I stepped into operational control fully. And I didn't rush. That was important. Because sudden dominance looks aggressive. Steady leadership looks earned. I held smaller team meetings. Listened more than I spoke. Fixed product inefficiencies Ryan had ignored for optics. Recalibrated projections to realistic, achievable milestones. The first month under the new structure? Growth stabilized. No flashy spikes. But consistent. Predictable. Investors love predictability more than hype. By month 2, something unexpected happened. Team morale improved. Developers started proposing features again without fear of being overridden. Marketing asked for data before launching campaigns. The culture shifted. Subtly. Healthier. And people noticed. Board members started emailing me directly for updates. Not in secret. Not behind Ryan's back. Just naturally. Confidence transfers quietly. Ryan, however, wasn't idle. He began reconnecting with external contacts. Advising startups publicly. Posting thought pieces on leadership resilience. Framing himself as reflective. Humbled. Learning from internal challenges. It was a smart move. Reputation repair. But there was still something unsettled between us. One evening, around day 63 of the review period, he asked to meet again. Rooftop cafe. Neutral ground. The city stretched below us. Lights flickering like distant signals. He looked thinner. Less sharp. More human. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. "That's new," I replied lightly. A faint smile flickered across his face. "I messed up." Simple. No excuses. No strategic language. Just admission. I studied him carefully. This wasn't the Ryan from board meetings. This was the one from the garage. I didn't trust that we could both succeed, he continued. So I tried to control the narrative. There it was again. Control. He always confused control with security. "And now?" I asked. He looked out over the city. "Now I realize control cost me more than competition ever would have." Silence settled between us. Not hostile. Just reflective. Then he asked something unexpected. "If the board offers you permanent CEO, what happens to me?" Honest question. Vulnerable. I didn't answer immediately. Because that decision wasn't emotional anymore. It was structural. "You stay," I said finally. "If you can work without trying to dominate." He looked at me carefully. "You'd keep me? On equal ground? Or not at all?" That line mattered. Because equality was always the core issue. He nodded slowly. "Fair." Day 90 arrived. Final review meeting. No dramatic music. No raised voices. Just evaluation. The chairman spoke first. "Over the past 90 days, operational stability has improved. Growth is aligned with verified projections. Team morale indicators are positive." Ryan listened quietly. I stayed still. Then came the decision. "We are appointing Daniel as permanent CEO effective immediately." There it was. Final. Structural. Not revenge. Not emotional. Just governance. Then the chairman added something I didn't expect. "Ryan will retain equity and remain on the board in advisory capacity, subject to collaborative compliance." Meaning he wasn't erased. He wasn't destroyed. He was repositioned. Exactly what he once tried to do to me. The meeting ended. People shook hands. Professional. Calm. Ryan approached me afterward. Extended his hand. I looked at it for a moment. Then shook it. Firm. Not friendly. Not hostile. Balanced. "You won," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No. The company did." And that was the truth. Because if I had focused only on destroying him, we both would have lost. Instead, I focused on protecting structure. Protecting integrity. Protecting myself. Weeks later, as I sat alone in my office, now officially CEO, I thought back to that first email months ago. The one that erased my name. I remembered the tight chest. The shaking hands. The feeling of being replaced. And I realized something powerful. The moment he tried to erase me was the moment I stopped needing his validation. Revenge didn't come from anger. It came from clarity. Clarity about my value. Clarity about documentation. Clarity about patience. Ryan once believed leadership meant standing alone at the top. Now he knew something different. Leadership without trust is temporary. And trust, once broken, costs more than control is worth. But deep down, I still wondered something. Was this truly the end of our war? Or just the quiet before one final test neither of us saw coming? Becoming CEO didn't feel like victory. It felt like responsibility. The office didn't look different. The desk was the same. The skyline outside the window hadn't changed. But the weight in the room had. Every decision now had my name attached to it. Not ours. Mine. And that's when the final test came. Not from Ryan. From outside. A competitor launched a near-identical feature. Aggressive marketing. Lower pricing. Targeting our core user base. Investors panicked. Board members scheduled emergency calls. This wasn't about internal politics anymore. This was survival. In the past, Ryan would have reacted dramatically. Public announcements. Bold promises. Overstated projections. This time? All eyes turned to me. Daniel, what's the response strategy? The chairman asked during the emergency meeting. Pressure. Real pressure. The kind that exposes leadership quality instantly. I didn't rush. We don't respond emotionally, I said calmly. We respond structurally. We analyzed their product. Found weaknesses. Security shortcuts. Scalability gaps. Instead of attacking publicly, we strengthened quietly. Improved performance speed. Enhanced user support. Rolled out stability updates. And most importantly, we communicated transparently with users. No exaggerated claims. No flashy attacks. Just clarity. Within weeks, something interesting happened. Users returned. Not because we were louder. Because we were reliable. Investor confidence stabilized. Board tension softened. And for the first time since all of this started, there was no chaos. Just growth. Steady. Real. One evening, long after most of the team had left, Ryan walked into my office again. But this time, his posture was different. Not defensive. Not calculating. He looked around slowly. You handled that well, he admitted. I nodded once. Team effort. He smirked slightly. You would have crushed me in college debates. I leaned back in my chair. You would have interrupted me before I finished. He laughed softly. And for a moment, it didn't feel like enemies. It felt like history. Then he grew serious. You know what scares me? He asked. What? That you became stronger after I betrayed you. I studied him. That's usually what happens. He nodded slowly. I thought removing you would make me bigger. He paused. But it just made me smaller. That sentence carried more weight than any board decision. Because this entire war had never been about equity percentages. It was about identity. He believed success required dominance. I learned success required structure. We stood there in silence for a moment. No hostility left. Just truth. I don't hate you, he said finally. I don't hate you either, I replied. And that surprised me. Because months ago, I did. But revenge changes you. It either makes you bitter, or it makes you disciplined. I chose discipline. Weeks passed. The company grew stronger. Culture stabilized. Trust rebuilt. Ryan stayed in his advisory role. Less loud. More thoughtful. Sometimes I'd catch him watching meetings quietly. Learning. Maybe even respecting. And then one afternoon, I received a message from him. Short. Simple. Coffee? We met at the same place we used to study during college finals. Same scratched wooden tables. Same burnt coffee smell. He looked different. Less polished. More grounded. I've been offered something, he said. What kind of something? A new startup. Smaller. Early stage. They want me as founding CEO. I nodded slowly. And? I'm considering it. Of course he was. Ryan always needed to build. But this time, maybe he'd build differently. He looked at me carefully. I wanted to tell you before anyone else. That mattered. Because months ago, he would have hidden it. Strategized silently. Positioned himself first. Now he was transparent. Growth. Real growth. If you take it, I said calmly, do it right? He nodded. No erasing. We both smiled faintly at that. And in that moment, something shifted permanently. Not friendship fully restored. Not brotherhood reborn. But something balanced. Respect. Weeks later, he officially stepped down from advisory to pursue his new venture. No drama. No sabotage. Just transition. The day he cleared out his office, he paused at the doorway. You know, he said quietly, if I hadn't betrayed you, I never would have learned. I looked at him evenly. If you hadn't betrayed me, I wouldn't have grown this much either. That was the strange truth. Pain refined both of us. In different ways. He left. The door closed. And for the first time since this whole story began, there was no tension left in the air. Just clarity. Because revenge, when done right, isn't about destruction. It's about balance restored. He tried to erase me. Instead, he revealed me. And sometimes, the most satisfying revenge isn't watching someone fall. It's watching yourself rise without becoming what hurt you. But let me ask you something. If you were in my position, would you have destroyed him completely? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Weeks turned into months. The company stabilized. Investors trusted the leadership. Employees no longer feared internal games. Ryan launched his new startup. Small, focused, independent. A learning ground. Not a battlefield. And the funny thing? He occasionally asked for advice. Not to control. Not to dominate. Just guidance. The betrayal that had once consumed me had transformed into clarity. Clarity about boundaries. Clarity about patience. Clarity about leadership. I realized revenge isn't always about crushing someone. It's about proving to yourself that no one can erase your worth. That even when betrayed, you rise. And yes, I could have exposed him, humiliated him, destroyed him completely. But that wouldn't have changed anything about me. So I didn't. I chose structure. I chose patience. I chose to let consequences do the work. And in the end, Ryan learned. I learned. The company learned. And I walked away stronger. Because the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. It's inevitable. It's disciplined. It's rising above. The end. Thanks for watching.